Something is changing in our waters. Not with explosions, not with war, but with silence, steel, and persistence. One of Asia's most respected maritime guardians has just retired after decades of service, a ship that stood for law, restraint, and order at sea. At the same time, massive foreign vessels, larger than many warships, continue to operate aggressively just beyond our shores. They block, they shadow, they intimidate, and they do it without firing a single shot. This is not coincidence. This is a shift in maritime power, and it directly affects the Philippines. In this video, we will explain why the retirement of a single ship matters, how gray zone operations are reshaping the West Philippine Sea, and what this means for our security, our fishermen, and our future. Watch until the end, because the final question is not about ships or nations. It's about whether we are ready for what comes next. This is Global Route. If you value clear analysis, verified facts, and stories that matter to our nation, subscribe now, because the waters around us are changing faster than most people realize. Tonight, we turn our focus to the water that surrounds us. Not as scenery, not as background, but as destiny. For nations like the Philippines, the sea is not optional. It is not secondary to land. It is not merely a boundary drawn on a map. The ocean is our lifeline. It feeds our people, carries our trade, connects our islands, and shields our sovereignty. Today, that lifeline is under pressure. This is not a story about one ship retiring or another ship arriving. It is not a technical discussion of hulls, tonnage, or propulsion systems. This is a story about power, about presence, and about how control at sea is established not through sudden war, but through quiet persistence. A respected guardian of maritime order has stepped aside. A far more aggressive force continues to expand. And between them stands the Philippines. This is Global Route, the meaning of a ship. To understand what is happening now, we must first understand what has just ended. In late 2024, Japan officially retired one of the most recognizable patrol vessels ever to sail in Asia, Shikishima. For over 3 decades, Shikishima operated as a flagship of the Japan Coast Guard. It was not designed to intimidate. It was not built to dominate. And it was never meant to fight a war. Yet its presence carried weight far beyond its armament. Launched in 1991, Shikishima emerged during a period when Japan was redefining how it projected power at sea. Bound by constitutional constraints and shaped by post-war lessons, Japan chose a maritime philosophy that emphasized restraint, legality, and professionalism. Shikishima embodied that approach. At approximately 150 meters in length and with a massive displacement for a Coast Guard vessel, it was among the largest patrol ships in the world at the time of its commissioning. Its size was not accidental. Japan needed ships that could remain at sea for extended periods, operate far from shore, and serve as command platforms during complex maritime operations. Japan's exclusive economic zone is vast, one of the largest globally. Policing it required endurance, reliability, and authority. Shikishima delivered all three. Power without aggression. Unlike naval combatants, Shikishima was not equipped with missiles or heavy strike weapons. Instead, it carried advanced surveillance systems, long-range navigation equipment, and aviation facilities capable of supporting helicopter operations. Its true strength was not firepower, it was credibility. The ship could respond to emergencies hundreds of nautical miles from Japanese ports. It could coordinate search and rescue missions, law enforcement actions, and maritime safety operations across vast distances. But perhaps its most telling role was one that rarely appeared in headlines. Shikishima was entrusted with escorting shipments of sensitive nuclear materials. These missions demanded absolute reliability. Failure was not an option. The ship had to deter interference without provoking escalation. It had to project authority while remaining within the bounds of international law. For decades, Shikishima did exactly that. It enforced regulations. It deterred illegal activity. It protected maritime commerce. It saved lives at sea, quietly, consistently, professionally. In doing so, it became more than a ship. It became a symbol of a maritime order built on rules rather than coercion. Ships age, steel fatigues, systems become obsolete, even legends must eventually step aside. After more than 30 years of constant deployment, Shikishima reached the limits of practical modernization. Japan had already begun fielding newer patrol vessels with improved sensors, better fuel efficiency, and advanced digital integration. From a technical standpoint, the retirement made sense. From a strategic standpoint, it marked something deeper. Shikishima represented an era when presence backed by law was often enough to maintain order at sea. That era is fading. As Japan quietly transitioned to newer platforms, the maritime environment around it and around Southeast Asia was becoming more confrontational. Because while one nation retired a symbol of restraint, another continued to build a fleet designed for pressure. Across the West Philippine Sea and the broader South China Sea, a very different type of vessel has become increasingly common. These ships are large, very large. Some displace more than 10,000 tons, rivaling or exceeding the size of many naval destroyers operated by Southeast Asian countries. Their hulls are reinforced, their bows are hardened. Their decks are crowded with sensors, antennas, and communication systems. They carry powerful water cannons capable of damaging or disabling smaller vessels. They maneuver aggressively, they block, they shadow, they linger, and yet they rarely carry the outward appearance of warships. Some fly the flag of the China Coast Guard. Others appear to be fishing boats, crewed by civilians. But appearances are deceiving. These vessels are not ordinary fishermen. They are part of a coordinated system often referred to as China's Maritime Militia, a force that operates in support of state objectives while maintaining plausible deniability. This ambiguity is not accidental. China's maritime approach relies heavily on what strategists call gray zone operations. These are actions that fall below the threshold of armed conflict but still achieve strategic goals. They are aggressive, persistent, and coercive, yet calibrated to avoid triggering a military response. The goal is not to win battles. The goal is to reshape reality. Chinese vessels obstruct resupply missions. They harass fishing boats. They shadow patrols at close range. They maintain constant presence. Each individual incident may seem minor, but together they form a pattern. Over time, presence becomes normalized. Control becomes assumed. Resistance becomes costly. This is how territory is absorbed without a single shot being fired. International law is unambiguous. In 2016, an international arbitral tribunal ruled that China's expansive claims in the South China Sea had no legal basis. The ruling affirmed that features claimed by China did not generate broad maritime entitlements, and that the Philippines' sovereign rights within its exclusive economic zone must be respected. China rejected the ruling outright, not with counter-legal arguments, not with negotiations, but with ships. Today, Chinese vessels operate routinely in areas well within Philippine maritime zones. They do not enforce international law, they enforce presence. This is the fundamental contrast shaping the region. One approach relies on law, alliances, and transparency. The other relies on ambiguity, persistence, and physical dominance. And the Philippines is directly exposed to this clash. The Philippines is, by nature, a maritime nation. With more than 7,600 islands and over 36,000 kilometers of coastline, the sea is woven into Filipino identity. It provides food, jobs, transportation, and security. Yet for much of recent history, maritime defense was underfunded and underprioritized. Ships aged, capabilities lagged. Coverage thinned. The consequences are now visible. Filipino fishermen pushed away from traditional grounds. Resupply missions facing obstruction. Sovereign rights challenged daily, not in speeches, but through physical presence. This story does not end in helplessness. In recent years, the Philippines has begun to change course. The commissioning of the Jose Rizal-class frigates marked a historic milestone for the Philippine Navy. For the first time in decades, the country fielded modern surface combatants with credible sensors, weapons, and command systems. The Philippine Coast Guard has expanded its fleet with new multi-role response vessels, improving patrol endurance, disaster response, and maritime law enforcement. These steps matter, but they are only the beginning, because the challenge faced by the Philippines is not hypothetical. It is present every day at sea. In contested waters, size is not vanity, it is leverage. Large vessels can remain at sea longer. They can intimidate smaller ships without firing a weapon. They can block routes, absorb impact, and dominate physical space. This is why China builds such massive Coast Guard ships. A 10,000-ton vessel confronting a 1,000-ton patrol ship does not need to act aggressively. The imbalance itself sends the message. Japan understood this logic decades ago. That is why ships like Shikishima existed. The Philippines is now learning the same lesson, but under pressure. Presence is everything. A ship that visits occasionally is noticed. A ship that stays becomes expected. A ship that never leaves becomes authority. China rotates vessels continuously, ensuring that even when one ship departs, another immediately replaces it. Presence is uninterrupted. For the Philippines, limited hull numbers make this difficult. Every day without patrol has consequences. Illegal fishing expands. Foreign structures harden. Narratives shift. What was once an intrusion becomes routine. What was once contested becomes normalized. This is how the status quo changes. The Philippines is not alone. Vietnam has invested heavily in large, long-endurance Coast Guard ships. Indonesia has consolidated maritime agencies to improve enforcement. Japan has increased patrols in disputed waters. Small and medium powers adapt, or they lose ground. For island nations, maritime security is not optional, it is existential. Japan's relationship with the Philippines is not transactional. It is strategic. Both are maritime nations. Both depend on open sea lanes. Both face sustained pressure in contested waters. Japan's assistance, from patrol vessels to radar systems and training, strengthens not only the Philippines, but regional stability as a whole. The question is not whether cooperation will continue. The question is how far it will go. Imagine a Philippine Coast Guard flagship capable of long deployments, helicopter operations, and command coordination. Such a ship would not provoke conflict, it would stabilize it. Because stability does not come from weakness. It comes from credible presence. Maritime dominance today is not just about ships. It is about satellites or drones. Maritime domain awareness systems. Secure communications, data fusion. A smaller fleet, when digitally integrated and supported by partners, can exert influence far beyond its size. Transparency has become a weapon. Documentation deters coercion. Visibility constrains abuse. Narrative control matters. The Philippines today is changing. Public awareness is higher than ever. Maritime incidents spark national discussion. Citizens understand that sovereignty at sea affects daily life. Sovereignty is defended not only by ships, but by people who understand what is at stake. Doing nothing is also a choice, and history records the consequences of hesitation. The sea does not change overnight. It changes slowly, through presence, persistence, and pressure. The retirement of a respected guardian and the rise of far more aggressive forces are not isolated events. They are signs of a maritime order in transition. In the West Philippine Sea, power is not being asserted through battles, but through endurance. Through ships that stay when others leave. Through actions that test limits day after day. For the Philippines, this is not a distant geopolitical debate. It is about fishermen who depend on these waters. It is about national dignity. It is about whether sovereignty is defended only in words or upheld through presence. The future at sea will belong to those who prepare, who understand what is happening, and who refuse to look away. If you believe these issues matter, if you believe informed citizens are essential to a strong nation, support this channel by subscribing. West Pacific Watch exists to track these developments, cut through noise, and tell the story of our waters clearly and honestly. Stay informed, stay vigilant. This is Global Route, signing off. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas.